Copyright University of Auckland, all rights reserved. The content and delivery of lectures in this course are protected by copyright. Material belonging to others may have been used in these lectures and copied by and solely for the educational purposes of the university under license. You may record the lectures for the purposes of private study or research, but you may not sell, alter, or further reproduce or distribute any part of these lectures to any other person. Failure to comply with the terms of this warning may expose you to legal action for copyright infringement by the copyright owner and/or disciplinary action by the university.
So good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Because it's a funny microphone. Yes, I suppose. My name is Paola Leardini, as most of you know already, and welcome to the final lecture of Communique 2015. And this is, of course, a special one because it's the last, and for this reason we decided to finish as we started, having some international prominent speaker. And so it's a pleasure for me tonight to introduce Jinhee Park and John Hong, who kindly came, well, actually from Australia, because they are working there temporarily at the UQ, University of Queensland, but they are based in New York and Seoul. And when I was still organizing this series, I had the chance to invite them. I, of course, checked their project, and on the website I found a quite interesting sentence, which I read to you, and I decided that they were the perfect match for this lecture series, and you understand why. And I read the following sentence. So, single speed design, which is the name of their architecture office, is an architecture firm that approaches design as a convergent interdisciplinary venture that aspires to bridge the utopian and the pragmatic. So, of course, that became the name of this series. I asked the permission, and anyway, just to explain their approach to architecture, instead of separating aspects of architecture, urbanism, landscape, history, social systems, and codes into their constituent disciplines, these essential design ingredients are simultaneously explored so that minimum form gains maximum effect. And this is their statement. A little bit about their background. Along with being published in major media, Single Speed Design has received many prestigious design awards, including the AIA Young Architects Award, the Emerging Voices Award, and the Young Architects Forum Award by the Architectural League of New York. OSIM Foundation for Sustainable Construction Award, the Metropolis Next Generation Prize, and 12 AIA awards. Jinhee and John have lectured and exhibited at many universities and conferences, including the Harvard Graduate School of Design, Columbia University, and Seoul National University, as well as at international design conferences. Just a couple of notes about their background. Jinhee Park received a Master in Architecture from the Harvard Graduate School of Design and the BFA in Industrial Design from Seoul National University. Since 2009, she has served as a design critic in architecture at the Harvard School of Design. And the previous appointment included the Morgenstern Chair Professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology and the Sasaki Distinguished Visiting Critic at the Boston Architectural College. John Hong, also principal of Single Speed Design, received a Master in Architecture with distinction from the Harvard Graduate School of Design and a BS in Architecture with honors from the University of Virginia. And since 2007 is Associate Professor in Practice at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. And in 2012 and 2013 was appointed Distinguished Visiting Professor at the School of Architecture of the City College of New York. So I think without any further ado, I would like to invite our speakers to share with us their concept of micro-urbanism. Please join me in welcoming Jinhee and John.
Thank you, yes. Okay. Well, thanks so much to coming out on. Yes.
Yeah, good.
Do I hold this microphone? What have other speakers done?
Just put it in there.
Flip
No,
out?
no, put it on there.
All right. All right.
Yeah, there. Is that all right?
And I'm legible. People can hear me. Is that okay?
Maybe with the... No,
No.
not really.
You know what? Maybe I just hold this and pretend
Yeah.
it's like a microphone. Yes. How's that? How's that? Okay.
Yeah, I think that might work better. Anyway.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out. Final review week, I heard. It's very busy, so it's a privilege that many of you have come out. Yes. So for a quick introduction, we have three. Speaking of micro-urbanism, we have three micro offices in Boston, in New York, and in Seoul as well. They work. We work on different projects, each of our offices, but when we need to combine the resources and the knowledge, and even the academic potential, we combine the work. And it's not that the project scales up; it's that there's different kinds of local knowledges that we can draw from. So instead of having an office that in a corporate setting you would have an office that works globally but brings maybe more general things to the global setting. We're actually right. Yeah. Something like this. Okay, good. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. We try to bring actually very specific and very deep local knowledge to the projects. Sort of a representation of our travel route and our work in progress. And one of the things that we try to base our practice on is the idea that the aspects of design are not looked at in a linear way, like this, in an additive way from program to social systems, but actually we try to think of them in a term that we're calling convergent, which means we begin to think of these aspects simultaneously and begin to look at leveraging the aspects of each of these. And so instead of starting with program and going to zoning, budget, structure, and these kind of things, and becoming a kind of system where you begin to add on solutions, all the solutions begin to then converge. So therefore, our emblem, the single-speed bicycle. I will hand this over to Jinhee.
Hello. Oh, okay. Am I on? Okay. So, oops. Micro-urbanism is the subject that we've been discussing and researching through our projects for past several years. So the micro-urbanism is a new way to form the city by breaking down the elements that forms the city into micro scale. So it's not about making everything small. It's about the finding core elements in micro scale so that we can recompose and come up with a system that can create the more broader spectrum of possibility. So we the setup this these two the words they're seemingly contradicting each other, but that has a characteristic of the micro-urbanism. So the first one is the physical multiplied by perceptual. This is the project we did for the Gwangju Biennale. It's a 2 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter cube box that we are supposed to design in the reflection of this the famous the pavilion in Korea. And so what our approach is, the box is the well defined from the outside, and through this gap when you enter, that you have through the reflection that you the boundary gets disappeared and it gets expanded endlessly. So that this inversion of the defined boundary from the outside and the undefined, limitless boundary, the inside that we explore, and that we've found that it becomes one of the possibilities that when we deal with this physical built environment. So from there to kind of a endless experience. And through the inversion, that we can invert not only about the boundary, but also the perception of this, the elements. So there's a planar elements that forms the object, like that. So that through this is the just quick the exercise that we to test out how we can expand the possibility of the physical elements. The issue is owning versus sharing. This is the loft renovation that we did in Chelsea, Manhattan. The client came to us. The 3 different family are the clients, and they asked us to design this space they can share. So in the originally the proposed actually the several rooms so for the each families, which they completely filled up this the space. And what we suggested instead is that the space they can be transformed to accommodate all these different the families' needs. So and we researched further so to find out the potential user of this kind of space. So when we look at this nomadic user, so that we mapped out the type of the user, and then we actually look at the occupancy ratio of the how much actually they use their own property in the city, and then we analyze the kind of the setup of their space, and by breaking down those elements and by making this combinable the space, and they can share share and convert to their own spatial need, then we can bring up their the occupancy ratio up to the higher side. So that was our arguments, and we expanded that argument to the urban scale. So this is the image that you think in the high density urban condition, and this is actual occupancy. So if we densify by creating the space that can be shared, then we can have this the vast of the empty space for the public, the library or park or things like that. So that becomes amenity for the city. Going back to the project itself, so because of the space has a very good view in the one side to Empire State Building. So we made this diagonal wall, which is consists of the different program. Oh, sorry. Oops. Okay. Sorry about that. So that through through this diagonal wall, you can have this extended view to the Empire State Building. But also that allows the both rooms can have a view to the major side. Otherwise, these rooms can have only view to the other side. And also that the diagonal wall is some part is used as the individual locker for the different family members, so they can leave their own belongings. That brings the sense of ownership for them. So we realize this is very important to make them feel that this is their own space, although their occupancy is shorter. So that the ownership and the sense of ownership, actually, it is important when we design the space to be shared. Also, this aluminum mesh curtain that defines forms the different divisions, and we use the curtain with the lighting. So if we lit outside, it looks opaque. If you lit inside, it looks transparent. So that by adjusting this lighting placement, and just by simply turning on and off the lighting, that we can actually change the property of this the same material to adjust the visual privacy. And also with the same themes, we designed also this the sliding bookshelf. So by horizontally sliding, that we can adjust the actually height between the shelves.
Okay, so another aspect of micro-urbanism, timing multiplied by programming. We experimented with this. I don't know if you have heard about the project in Ordos, where 100 architects were invited out into the desert by Herzog de Meuron and also Ai Weiwei, the artist from China, and asked to design a villa. And so this was from the Ai Weiwei exhibit in Switzerland, and this is our project here. But in a way, it's a kind of showcase of global architecture. And here's the kind of events that was happening. We're sort of in this. Our model's not here yet, but we called it the New York Ghetto because somehow we had a random draw of which lot we could get. This is all kind of Ai Weiwei's. He's also works a lot in performance as well, and so this was one of his ideas that each architect would randomly draw literally out of a fishbowl which lot they would work. Oddly enough, all the firms from New York ended up in the same area, so we called it the New York Ghetto. But it was fun working in collaboration with our fellow architects from New York. And so here's the site, and here's us occupying this blistering hot desert in mainly black clothes, which is not very comfortable with all the sunlight. Actually, I don't have my black jacket on. There's me and there's Jinhee. But the interesting thing about the site, it is isolated, and most of the clients would be actually people that would be visiting on occasion. So similar to the project that Jinhee was talking about in New York, the project is not something that is in constant use. And we thought that this was one of the kind of strange problems of this, and we use it as a platform to exercise in terms of timing and programming. So the idea is that each of these towers has a very specific program. There's 8 towers, so instead of beginning to think of this as one large house, we began to think of each of these towers having their own distinct programs, like the living room tower, the bedroom tower, the bathroom tower. And through that verticality, that stacking of programs, we were able to turn on and off that energy use of the house, so that during a kind of diurnal cycle, only parts of the house are occupied. And this was a kind of energy strategy, but also a kind of timing and programming strategy. And here's a view of those 8 towers. And the project begins to capture this kind of vast, uncontrollable light with a series of openings that are controlled so that they give a sense of privacy, but also a sense of space, where you don't see the adjacent towers because many of these windows are pointing towards the sky. So there's a sense of openness within the kind of density that we've created, but also a sense, different layers of privacy. We had to work with very low-tech means, so the leaning of each of these towers is based on the distance from the foundation wall. We worked with SGH, which is a very a great engineering company in Boston, trying to figure out how we can make a kind of load-bearing structure that can lean but not need any additional structure other than its kind of weight. So through that leaning, the towers start from these kind of autonomous blocks, but then begin to converge into one large building, and then they begin to separate again at the roof. So they unbundle and bundle back again. And through this kind of collision, you get these separations, but you also get different kinds of adjacencies that might be unexpected. And so we also wanted to create a kind of village feel to these towers. So in a way, the lighting of it begins to reflect from one tower to the next and make these spaces that are communal in a way. So instead of conceiving it as one large house, it becomes a kind of complex. There's these flash floods that happen in the Mongolian desert, and we thought it was a waste to let that water just run off as it usually does, like a sieve through the sand. So by just using clay pots, which you can get locally, the water is trapped in the ground for longer periods, and that begins to regenerate the landscape. Similarly, we're looking at this idea of division as multiplied by continuity. Again, two terms that seem like they're in conflict, but they can actually work together. We did a kind of mini Ordos project. This was in Portland, Oregon, and many of the same characters from Ordos were invited to participate in this smaller development project. Everyone wanted these kind of larger lots. Will Bruder is very famous. He gets the end lot. Julian de Schmidt, he gets the sort of the front lot. So, we didn't draw these out of a fishbowl. We kind of negotiated. But fortunately, we wanted the lot that nobody wanted, which was the smallest lot. It's 16 by 16 feet. Really difficult to build anything of substantive volume in this lot. But we were actually excited by its potential, this kind of castaway lot that nobody wanted. Here's our little project. And the idea was that through curation, you could actually begin to fit the entire city within 16 by 16 feet. And again, looking at the diurnal cycle as a kind of music score. So instead of there being rooms, dedicated rooms that are like living rooms, bathrooms, kitchens, what if we thought about surfaces that were used throughout the day and began to compose them in a kind of musical score? So instead of these rooms that maybe are unoccupied, we're actually working with surfaces that are programmatic. At the same time, we were planning no clear glazing. There would just be shutters that you would open up. The weather is pretty mild in Portland. But what that does on the interior is create spaces that have very diffuse shadows. There's no sharp shadows. The lack of sharp shadows blurs the distinction of space. It actually makes the distances a little bit ambiguous. So that also increases the sort of perceptual size of the space. We also want it to be a kind of a toy, a kit of parts, something that you could go to the hardware store and buy. So all of it is based on dimensions of plywood and lumber that you could get from the hardware store. Another aspect, local as multiplied by national. Instead of showing a project for this one, we wanted to show a book that we pretty recently finished a couple years ago called Convergent Flux, and we were looking at the architecture in Korea, and a lot of times when you see architecture coming out of Korea in publications, there's a kind of wow factor. Like, look at all the crazy stuff that Koreans are doing. But we wanted to put it on a global metric in a way and begin to compare the events and the kind of issues that are going on in Korea, so that we could use the kind of rapid development of design in Korea as a kind of example that other nations could learn from. So instead of isolating Korea as a kind of local, unique situation, we want to open it up into a global discussion, and that was one of the goals. And there's many contradictions that are happening in terms of the landscape in the city. I mean, you have this also in New Zealand. In terms of the kinds of density that are happening, but also low-rise density. The almost insane cycles of construction and urban renewal and destruction. So we began to map some of these factors out with 5 metrics dealing with landscape, history, materiality, and also in terms of social aspects as well. And began to map out these projects that seem very diverse, and again, that have been celebrated internationally, but also celebrated in, I think, a kind of superficial way, in that they're looked at as projects that are like unique and one-off and very specific. We actually want to tie them to other kind of global networks and global situations. And invited some really great theorists to begin to talk about the work.
So, so we did a series of the project that in Korea through that study. So diversity multiplied by density. It's a white block art gallery that we built in Haeri in South Korea. We got it through competition, and competition brief calls mainly for flexible space. And because the owner doesn't know that time that what kind of art that he's going to want to exhibit. So usually the flexibility of the exhibition space can be achieved by this big empty space that can be partitioned off. And the way that we approach the flexible space is different. And so we instead of making one big space and then providing just one big space, we actually provided many different space with the different the scales, different proportions, and different lighting conditions, so that we created this variety of the different condition for all different media of arts. The site is located in the center of the village, and in front of the lake. And because of its location, that it could block the view to the lake from this neighbor. So we open up the certain part of the building so that all the neighbors can still keep the view. And the other issue of this project is that the Haeri Art Village is located in the near North Korean border. So that is North Korea. There's you cannot see that statue, but you can see North Korea from the site. So through this kind of tension, if you look at just the site itself, it looks really calm, and it's a really nice area with the and nice fog and the nice nature element. But the underlying condition is that because of there's this military conditions, that there's the very strict height restriction also. So to meet that height restriction and to gain the enough floor area, to have this flexible space, the conventional way to do to create the flexible space is that it becomes this like a pancake homogeneous space. But what we propose is this series of diverse space. So through along the viewing sequence, through this gallery, that the people can experience the different scale of the exhibitions and different the lighting conditions. Also that there's this enclosed box, and then that you can come out to this transparent box that they can see the nature. So this constant the constant shift of this very clean exhibition space to the outdoor the landscape actually is that becomes that provides very vibrant viewing experience. And also the column, instead of having the thick viewer column, we propose this thinner but many columns to expand the transparent view. From the entry, that entry is hinted by this the curved glass, and that this curvature actually the provide actually the transparency to the lakeside. So as you walk in through there by this diagonal the glass opening, that you are guided to this departure point of the whole viewing sequence. And so each the space of this gallery is designed to become a exhibition space, and each exhibition space have a different proportion again. And some of the space can be used as a performance space. And this the completely enclosed space, and coming out of the transparent box that can have the full of the natural light, actually can bring in the diverse experience of into this building. As I said, we made it that every space can be used as a exhibition space, and even this fire stairs that can be used as a nice exhibition area. And also the surrounding here is one of the distinctive feature is this the foggy weather, and we wanted to use that the characteristic of nature and fog, and also the pear blossom trees. So during the blossom seasons, that it can feel the transparent area of this the glazing, and that convert the perception of the space from the inside. And when we designed this free pattern on the glass, we actually wrote this program to define the location and density of the free pattern that reduce the heat gain and also cut the glare for the exhibition. Of course, there's the limited budget, so we limited into the 10 plates, 10 different the patterns to form more organic expression of the facade.
And surveillance and amenity. We're beginning to think about micro-urbanism and also the idea of the smart city. And our friends at Arup let us borrow this great diagram, where if you look at the tactics for achieving a kind of sustainable city, renewable resources is sort of at the bottom. Physical interventions, you can make a significant change, but the most significant change is achieved by behavior change. So we found this incredibly interesting in terms of the role of architecture, because so much we talk about materiality in terms of sustainability, but how can architecture then work in terms of changing behavior? So in that way, infrastructure can be looked at in two different aspects. There's of course the hard infrastructure, which we're all familiar with, but also we begin to look at soft infrastructure like information, data, security, and social networks. And can that be a way that urban performance is achieved? So we did a project that was based on some of these notions, but also was specifically looking at security cameras and how that can become an urban amenity. So the site itself was something that needed lighting for safety, and it connected a very important road. And this is our white block gallery, the project that Jinhee just showed, to the waterfront. And so this kind of underutilized path, the task of the project was to make a safer path through lighting. And so we were looking at this idea of interactive architecture and also the way in which surveillance cameras can be used. So tracking movements of people, but also looking at weather conditions as well, and beginning to look at how both of those can intertwine in a new interface for lighting. Here's the path itself. And just a second. And so here you see there's no people right now, but it's tracking the wind direction. And there's also a sound component as well. So, in a very simple way, it lights the path for you. It's just the program for this. But we also wanted to, in a way, augment social behavior. So, if there's a group, they could begin to converge in the middle, and you get a kind of more animated, interactive experience if you began to come together. And so some of these clouds can then become a kind of impromptu stage where you could begin to perform maybe underneath them. The middle cloud whispers to you. We wanted to have these kind of poetics that were slightly ominous, because this is about surveillance as well. So we're also questioning how surveillance, of course, could have an ominous side to it. So it's a kind of revealing of that process. And these are just ways in which the weather is being tracked. So when it's hot, it gives you a cold light to give you a sense of warmth. Or when it's cold, it gives you a sense of heat through the sound and light. And then in terms of the fog, it would begin to kind of pulsate. And then things that are usually invisible, like wind, become visible. So each of these clouds have elements. The cloud that's further away is called the water cloud. The middle is the whispering cloud. the one closest to you is fire. And so these kind of elements begin to mix in terms of their lighting and their sound. Again, this is when many people gather and it begins to become much more animated.
All-time security, liberty. What we consume, consumer Ovidian bloom, Orobar.
Here's a view of that underneath. Oh, we don't have the diagram showing the infrastructure. There's very small speakers. The structural resolution of this was interesting because we wanted to make it as thin as possible, and we could have even made it thinner, but it was limited by the kind of technology. So there's these linear speakers that are embedded in this. There's kind of security cameras that are also up here, and of course the lighting itself. So in a way, it's a kind of display system that is embedded with infrastructure. And the columns themselves are diagonal so that they can take lateral forces. And so the construction of this was actually really interesting because at the same time it wanted to be a kind of material thing, it also wanted to be immaterial as well. So we were trying to attain something that was really thin and light.
So finally, that we built this the micro housing the last year. Is it last year? I'm getting confused. Oh no, right, last year. And we built this different idea into the project. It's the small multifamily housing development. Then it has enough diversity and the different function, different programs, and different social lives, so that we can bring in this the urbanity into there. The site is in Korea, in Jamsil area. Site is around there. So the Jamsil area is the main residential district. That you have two different type of residential building, which is this high-rise apartment complex, and this mid-rise the mixed-use housing. And when we look at this very typical image that you see in many different cities, that this apartment complex, that you only get this 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom setup, where it's very the fixed and rigid, and we are thinking that this type of housing, it doesn't provide this different needs and the new lifestyle that nowadays we need more and more. So we look at this this typical the family type. This is the data of the Korea. So 1995, this nuclear family type, the couple with the kids takes more than 30% of the whole different family type. And as time goes by, so by year 2035, that the nuclear family type is going to take less than 10%. And then we are facing all these different type of families that will fill this rest about 90%. And the current setup previous the type cannot provide this the different the family types doesn't provide the space for the different family types. And also we look at the fluctuation of the family size. So when you become single, the age of 18, that you live alone and until you get married, and then and then you have kid, and you get divorced, and then remarried, and then your kids get independent and repeat the cycle again. And then through there, and then you become alone again. And then the life gets actually longer and longer. So that's a whole the fluctuation of the family size. Actually, it happens more and more, and the duration of living in the smaller the scale of the space it gets longer and longer. So our ambition is how to make this the new prototype that can accommodate all this different change in these days. So this is the micro housing we built, and as you can see, this is the surrounding is looks diverse, but the interior condition actually is the similar to this apartment, like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or this very fixed type. And also what we looked at is that there's the condition of this residential district, the ground level condition, because of the parking requirements. That if you walk down to this residential area, although this is a residential area, that what you see is the parking. So it's an endless parking that on the ground level. So there's no the sense of a community. There's no interaction between the neighbors, and so we wanted to bring the program down on the ground level as much as we can, and that is one of the reasons why we made it our the unit the small, because the area of the unit actually triggers the number of parking requirement. So the unit is a 12 square meter, 120 square feet, which is extremely small. It's the minimum legal size of Korea, minimum legal residential space in Korea. So they use the tapioca actually as an analogy. So there's a very private core of this hard core of your space, and then that is surrounded by this gel kind of space that you can expand your boundary to this the certain distance. So when to translate the idea into the plan, we limited this the type of unit into two. One is a more rectangular type, and the other one is more squarish, to maximize the construction efficiency. Although the unit type is limited, depending on how that is located into the plan, that the characteristic of the space can be changed. So, for instance, this unit has a lot of balcony space. We name the potential user, ideal user, green thumb, can grow all this the plants by using this the outdoor space. Whereas there's the same proportion, the same space that the film critic can take advantage of the wall that so that goes to project the movie which goes beyond his or her own boundaries. This is the space that shows the in-between space, the tapioca space. And also through there, this is opening the door to this tapioca space, and that becomes also the window when the user flip out the desk. So it can be used in a different way. Also, there's that idea of the combining this the small units to become the bigger units. So this is the one of this combined units that becomes a one-bedroom space, and depending on how you combine these units and this combined later on. So there's the flexibility into this system that can react to the different need throughout your life cycles and the change of your family. The potential of the use of the space and the boundary of the space can go beyond physical boundary. For instance, that this unit is located in this in the kind of very hidden area, but still they can be can have a view through this fire stairs up to the sky, and the view and natural light, natural ventilation. Actually, there's the very major elements that can bring the quality of life in this the very the small space. And from ground floor, that we brought down the program to the ground level, and so in the underground there's the cafe and the galleries, and the micro cafe and the micro theater that can be used becomes the amenity for the residents. So from the street, we can enter through this the cafe. So it is used as a cafe during the day, and used as the theater during the night. So that there's multiple use of the same space that brings up the efficiency of the use of this kind of space.
So for the screen, we took cues from the context, and there's a lot of informal ways in which these spaces that don't really belong to one property or the other. Of course, there are property lines, but they're appropriated in many different creative ways in terms of the edge condition. There's many ways in which the screen functions. It can be a balcony, it can be a security, and so on and so forth. But in a way, it extends the boundary in different kinds of ways, whether it be security or balcony. So we wanted to do the same thing with our screen, where even though it's a homogeneous system that kind of wraps the whole building, there's subtle variations with it that allows it to be something that you might grow something on. The railings actually drain and it guides the water down back to the ground. There are security bars over certain the lower units, but also it can become a kind of bike rack. The units themselves become very flexible in that we wanted to say that every unit actually has a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, this kind of thing. By folding out the furniture, you can have these different activities. And so here's a kind of day in the life. Wake up, check your phone, of course. But there's also a closet that uses the depth of the bed. And then you put the bed away so you can actually have a larger space. In this is the smallest unit, so we wanted to kind of demonstrate this series in the small unit. There's natural light that comes in through the shower in the bathroom, and it begins to be distributed into the room through this frosted glass. But also there's clear story lighting all the way around, so that there's a feeling that the space extends beyond your unit. Quick little breakfast, say hello to your neighbor, and off you go. And then in terms of the social space, the doors themselves, this was a kind of required corridor space, and you can see how small the units are in relation to the required corridor. Actually, we were able to extend these a little bigger. So in terms of this idea of tapioca space, you can use the doors to begin to reconfigure different kind of social arrangements. And so here's that corridor space right now. This kind of thing. And I will give this back to you.
We wanted to expand also this possibility of the kind of setup by implementing technology aggressively in a way. So when we implement the smart technology, that the wall becomes the more than wall and window becomes more than windows. So we mapped out the several possibility. And so, for instance, this vestibule, when you enter your own apartment through the fingerprint sensor, that it can sensor and to set up this the room condition to customize your own need. And you can also the boundary it can be achieved by different means, not only the physical walls or the windows, so that through there the opening can be used as screen, or the dormer curtain can also create the boundary without the physically closing off. Also, even the idea of a privacy can be approached in different ways. So, like bedroom, very private space of the window can be used as a display of different informations, and they can becomes transparent actually, so that you can actually watch the elderly or the children while you're working on the other side, and also that can create the different kind of this virtual environment. So we are now researching on this the further to make expand this possibility of this micro housing further. So that's it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that if you agree, we have some time for questions. I hope that we have some questions. Because of course
Yes. Right. So this is for a private developer. What we propose is, of course, is that making the profit is the major goal for the developers. So what we propose is that instead of making bigger rooms, or that we make the small rooms but many. So we fit in the many units into here and then make this very efficient, so that the price of rent actually can be higher than the market rate, basically. So that was the one of the strategy, and the other one is we wanted to create actually the more like sustainable community by implementing this, not only just housing but also the galleries and the cafes, and also that the owner actually runs the cafes and galleries, and the resident of the micro housing also is a part of it, that the people that is relate to that the industry, so that there is this interaction between the residents, and that there's the use of this different program actually that enhance their quality of life of the residents. Yes. Yes.
How are the residents, do the residents own these apartments, or are they tenants, or how is the selection process around?
Should I just? Right. It was a bit of an experiment from the get-go, where there was supposed to be a kind of artisan residence program, but the demand for housing for the slide that Jinhee showed, the demand for affordable smaller units that aren't these 2 or 3 bedrooms that are mostly prevalent in Korea was so great that they just decided to instead of curating a kind of artisan residence program, they just started to open up to the market, with the idea that some of the units can combine actually has become really fruitful, because there's 14 modules, but right now there's about 9 units. We're calling them units because some of the modules have been combined into a larger unit, and so a lot of micro housing doesn't have that flexibility, and I think this is where we're trying to propose this innovation, where the tenants actually stay longer. They're renting, but if their life changes, like for instance, if you have a partner, then you can rent 2 of the units next to each other, or if you break up, then you can close the units off again. And so the idea is that it will be more sustainable in terms of its people staying there longer. It's only been open for about 8 months or so, but it's 100% occupied, and there's a waiting list to get in. And part of that waiting list, we want to say, oh, of course it's design, yes. We create desire through the design, but there is that, but the desire also is to be part of a housing complex that does have these amenities. So the coffee shop offers 2 free cups of really nice coffee a day to anyone that lives there. And so there's this kind of collaboration between living and these community spaces. Yes, please.
So what we focused on this is again, it's not about the size of making micro, but about the possibility of being expandable. So it can be combined or it can be contracted. So that is it. So currently we are working with the company developing this in bigger scale. And the critical thing of this that we see is that through this system and with this system that the programming of this is also important. So in addition to residential program, there's different kind of program. What kind of program that goes there is also important, and how to manage is also important. And we are also trying to for the service into this whole system. So it's not, we are not only providing shell, but also the whole programming and to the maintenance.
And so one of the things also about this scale is that it's very nimble. This lot is really difficult to build on, and it was a challenge getting the crane on there. Originally, it was supposed to be prefabricated boxes, but the myth of prefabrication is you need a crane to lift things into place. And so the nimbleness of micro-urbanism can be used in existing parts of the city. So this is one of our arguments as well. The lot is 500 square meters, 5,000 square feet. Somewhere like 500 square meters, so it's a very small lot. And we're just to, I wish we could show images, but we haven't had our final review at University of Queensland, where we're actually, the studio is about micro-urbanism in Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea. And that's a Stalinist city with you know, really wide streets where there's no cars, obviously. It's a kind of symbolic city that was built on a kind of massive scale. So we're trying to experiment with the idea of micro-urbanism within this other kind of context, bringing really fine grain to a city that was based on these Stalinist principles. So hopefully we can show you at an urban scale how this works. In a week. Yes. Oh, the width of the corridor, it's just the handicap access code in Korea. It's a little bit wider than the States, interestingly enough. Yes.
Well, the one of the reason why we made this corridor wider is that we made the units the smaller, and then it made the space that can be shared bigger. So the one of the reason is that, as I explained, that is because that triggers the number of parking that we have to put. The other one is that actually the presentation we did is we wanted the people to use the corridor, but then of course, you know, people, the question often that, you know, if the real residents can use, or they will use like the way that we describe, but we believe that it's really important to describe that, you know, the potential use of, or suggestion of the use of the space, because otherwise it can be unused or misused later on. So this is one of the suggestion, one of the example, but not the, you know, the only way. And each floor have the different setup depending on the, you know, how many the units are, and also the what kind of the glazing condition is. So the use of this shared space, the corridor space, it can be very different, and, you know, depending on the, you know, different floor.
All right. Oh yes,
Yes.
one more question. Yes.
I have a question. It could be like professional, personal question. And there is a difference between the people who plays the piano and a pianist. There is a difference between the people who take pictures than a photographer. So for you both, which one is the difference between the people who arrange spaces and an architect?
Oh, that arrange spaces, you mean? On their own. What's the difference? That's a good question. I like the piano player versus pianist, right? I think that difference is becoming more and more, I don't have a good answer, but I think that difference is becoming more and more blurry. I'm just thinking of like all the people that have home studios and now they're actually musicians, like myself. I'm all of a sudden a musician, but I'm terrible at playing music. So, that difference is actually becoming blurry, and I think this is a good question for maybe the next lecture series, because I think the architecture profession is in a way becoming more more what's the word? Collaborative because of that. You know, users are becoming much more, but it's also becoming much more diffuse. I think you've noticed in at the schools too that the efficacy, the power of architecture to actually kind of make a statement and actually create change, that's being questioned at the core. And I think this is what you're actually talking about. So I don't have a good answer for that. Jinhee might have a better one.
No, I cannot think of better.
Yeah.